So yesterday we talked about the commandment to tell the story of the Exodus to our children, and Rabbi Melamed expands on that a little bit more, comparing it to other paragraphs of the Shema, which we didn't touch on yesterday. Yesterday we talked about the first and second paragraphs of the Shema, where it says that we're supposed to tell our children all the words of Hashem and all the commandments based on their understanding and based on their age at different stages, but now specifically about this mitzvah to tell our children about the Exodus from Egypt. So the Torah commands us to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt on the very night we left Egypt for freedom. The rabbis say in the Talmud that it's not very clear when we actually left. There's a beautiful midrash that when the Pharaoh finally met Moses that night, maybe I'll just preface. The Pharaoh told Moses earlier in chapter 10 that the next time he sees him, he will be dead, and it's not completely understandable who will be dead, either the Pharaoh or Moses. But the rabbis say that at night you don't really see people, and so that threat was not actively followed through. So when Pharaoh came to Moses that night after the firstborn were killed, he told him, leave now. And Moses responded, according to the Midrash, we are not thieves. We don't run away at night. We actually are going to take our sweet time to go out of Egypt, and we will do it in broad daylight in order for everybody to see that not only you have released us per se, but also that Hashem is the one who maneuvers and commands everything that happens. So back to Rav Melamed. Actually, we are commanded to remember the Exodus every day of the year, as it states, so that you remember the day you left Egypt every day of your life, and in Devarim and Parshat Re'eh. And Benzoma infers from an apparent superfluity in this verse, Kol Yemei instead of Yemei, which means days, that we must invoke the Exodus not only every day, but also every night. And that's a discussion in the Gemara Brachos, which some Haggadahs actually bring this discussion. To fulfill the obligation to invoke the Exodus every day and night, we recite the third paragraph of the Shema each morning and evening, as this paragraph states, I am the Lord your God who has taken you out of Egypt to be your God. I am the Lord your God. And that's in Bamidbar, the very last verse of chapter 15. So just one more thing about that. In the Haggadah, we say, Yemei Chayecha could be the actual days, and Kol Yemei Chayecha, all the days of your life includes the nights. But the rabbi's understanding of that verse and maybe that extra word Kol is Yemei Chayecha Ha'olam Hazeh, this world, and Kol Yemei Chayecha, all the days of your life include the days of the world to come, the next world, the Gan Eden, and other words that are describing that next world. So, yet there are several important differences between the daily mitzvah and the mitzvah on the Seder night. To fulfill the daily mitzvah, it is sufficient to mention the Exodus, whereas the mitzvah on Pesach night is to narrate broadly the events of the Exodus from Egypt, and that's why we are given a very free hand to extrapolate and expand on what we remember or know about that. Just for example, in Rabbi Yossi's description that we read in the Haggadah, there's 200 different miracles that happened during the Exodus. He doesn't list them, but it's basically the idea that we can expand and say, not only did we have this, we also had that, and that is why it's a little bit different from the daily mitzvah. B, the mitzvah of the Seder night is to relate the story to the children, as opposed to just talking about what the Torah says. And so to children, we have to give it to them at their level and of understanding, and that's very important. You can't tell people, you can't tell children about all kinds of people dying, because that doesn't mean much to them unless they suffered a loss of a grandparent or something like that, God forbid. C, on a Seder night, the mitzvah is to tell the story while the matzah and maror are set out in front of us. And D, on a Seder night, we tell a story by way of questions and answers. And last, E, women are exempt from the daily mitzvah to commemorate the Exodus, and they don't have to say the third paragraph of the Shema in the evening, as we learned before, but are obligated to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt on the Seder night. So if the father isn't there, or if the father isn't able to say it in the proper way, we ask the women to do so instead of us. And last, the Exodus from Egypt is the basis of Jewish faith, for it was the first time that God's providence was revealed in the world to an entire nation with great signs and wonders. And by the way, the Kuzari says that that's not the reason why we believe in God, but it really helps to understand what God did for us. With the Exodus, it became clear that God has chosen Israel to be the chosen nation and to reveal his word in the world. For this reason, every Shabbat and Yom Tov commemorates the Exodus from Egypt, and we say Zechel Ma'aser Rashit in every Kiddush, not only Yom Tov, but also on Shabbat, especially in prayers and Kiddush. By the way, I think we mentioned this before. On the Friday night Kiddush, we mentioned primarily the resting on the seventh day from creating the world. On Shabbos morning, in the Kiddush, and also in the Amidah, we talk about the Exodus from Egypt, because that is really what the first mitzvah that was given to the Jewish people, to remember and practice those days of coming out of Egypt. By virtue of unique mitzvah to tell a story of the Exodus in depth on the Seder night, our faith becomes more firmly established, and added meaning is given to all the brief remembrances of the Exodus throughout the year. So, as today is the Erev Shabbat HaGadol, the eve, of the Great Shabbat, there's an explanation that is most accepted, that the reason why it's called Shabbat HaGadol is because the verses from Malachi talk about Yom Hashem HaGadol VaHaNorah, the great day of Hashem, when the Messiah will come and the shofar will be blown, and so I think that's a very good connection to what we just talked about telling the story of the Exodus. It's not only about remembering the past, but also looking forward to the future, when the miracles of the Exodus from Egypt, according to the prophets, will be in multitude more than the miracles when we came out of Egypt. And so we have to remember this day and celebrate it. And maybe one last but not least thing is that, according to the Torah, the taking of the Paschal lamb during the time that they were in Egypt was on the 10th day of Nisan, of the month of the spring, which is tomorrow. So we are, in terms of the days of the week, exactly like we were at the Exodus. On Wednesday night is when we came out of Egypt, or like we said, probably on Thursday morning. So these are all very, very good connections to the Parsha, and we'll stop here and open up for questions.